like to speak with you about urban youth development. And what I mean by that is helping children and youth from the hood escape poverty and reach their full potential in life. This is one of my greatest passions. It's why I started the Urban Mentoring Academy in 2014. And I'll be the first one to admit that this is incredibly hard work. So hard, sometimes it's hilarious. Let me tell you about one of my students. We'll call him Ricky today. So for about 7 years, I had the blessing, privilege, and responsibility of directing the I Have a Dream Foundation. Our main program with I Have a Dream was a learning center in the Pisgah View Apartments. It's the largest government housing neighborhood here in Asheville. And at this learning center, every day our students would get off the bus. They come straight through the neighborhood, straight to program. And we do snack, we do enrichment, we do homework, we do PE. And at 5:30, the kids would be done and they'd go home. And one afternoon, 5:30, we'd give about 5 or 6 kids the opportunity to stay after and earn an extra snack by sweeping up, cleaning up, taking trash outside. And so about 5 or 6 of us were in the kitchen this afternoon. And as we'll call her, Alice is dunking a graham cracker into a cup of cold milk. She just starts crying. She's a tender-hearted, sweet second grader at the time. And I said, Alice, what's wrong, honey? Why are you crying? She says, nothing, Mr. Jazz. I just miss my mom. I said, I definitely understand. I grew up without my dad, and I definitely know that's hard. But I want you to know we care about you, and it's okay not to be okay. So one of my third graders, we'll call him Ricky, he's looking off into space, eating his graham crackers and milk, and he says, I ain't seen my daddy in 10 years. I said, Ricky, I'm so sorry to hear that. I said, wait, how old are you? He's like, 8. So working with urban youth is certainly hard. Sometimes it's so hard. It's hilarious. But I do what I do because this is my story. I was born into the hood. I went to foster care when I was 4. I grew up from there with a single mother on government assistance, much of that in impoverished communities. But now having graduated from college, earned a master's degree, now getting the privilege of living out what I believe is my purpose, I'm kind of on a Harriet Tubman type of a tip. You know what I'm saying? I want to see others from the hood make it as well. But from my experience in life and vocation, and from some very compelling research that I want to share with you today, I've come to the conclusion that helping children and youth from the hood escape poverty, reach their full potential, live out their purpose, offer the world the best version of themselves, I found that it is actually not as complex as many people think. And I believe that it actually boils down to 2 things. Urban youth need the right information, and urban youth need the right kind of support. So, right information, it's vitally important that an urban youth understand that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you in life is you. And I believe this is important for 2 reasons. First, this is the difference between a victim mindset and a victor mindset. And I find that a lot of urban youth feel defeated before they ever have the opportunity to make healthy, responsible decisions that will position them to have a successful future. And 2, it's important because it's true. And there was a report released by the Brookings Institution from Washington, D.C. in 2013 that highlights what I call the big 3. Everybody say the big 3. Go ahead. The big 3. And what the Brookings report found in 2013 is that 98%, virtually all, 98% of persons from below the poverty line who did 3 things escaped poverty. And 75% of them went on to make $55,000 or more per year. What are the big 3? Graduate high school, get a full-time job, any job. And 3, wait until the age of 21 to get married and have children. 98% of persons below the poverty line, despite their specific situations, who did these 3 things, escaped poverty. 75% of them went on to make $55,000 or more per year. I believe it's imperative for urban youth to have the right kind of information. The person who has the most to do with what happens to you in life is you. But I want to spend the rest of my time talking about the fact that urban youth need the right kind of support. And contrary to popular belief, given the fact that I've had the great blessing and privilege of living in and laboring in Charlotte, next door, I grew up in Gastonia, Asheville, had the blessing of spending a year in Atlanta recently. I've observed, I've come to the conviction that actually the hood is not underserved in the sense that we think about what it means to be underserved. I'd be hard-pressed to find a single impoverished inner-city community that doesn't have a great spectrum and magnitude of resources, opportunities, people, and support flooding into these communities. Even here in Asheville, there's ready access to support like financial assistance with utility bills, rent, low-income housing, food assistance through food stamps, free and reduced breakfast and lunch programs, child care vouchers. I could go on and on and on. But what I believe is that this flood of resources, the vast majority of which I was able to benefit from when I was a kid, the thing is, these resources in and of themselves do not break the cycle of poverty. So support is very important, but it can be dangerous. So in 1965, there was a report released by the U.S. government called the Moynihan Report, also called The Negro Family, the Case for National Action. And what we see in this report is that at the time in 1965, catch this, 20% of black families were single parent. And it caused a great alarm for President Lyndon B. Johnson and his administration. And so Lyndon B. Johnson declared war on poverty. And so he initiated a full spectrum and magnitude of resources that would assist families growing up primarily with single parent homes, but in poverty. Well, what ended up happening was that the results went in the opposite direction. So in 50 years, what was 20% fatherless homes or single-parent homes, primarily fatherless homes, has now become, catch this, 72%. In the white community, in the 60s, single-parent homes was 5%. It's now 25%, roughly what it was in the black community. And now the Latino community in America is experiencing 50% single-parent homes. Now, the reason this is important is because statistics show that there's a tremendously strong relationship between single-parent homes and poverty. And so I think we have to really get serious about evaluating what is the right kind of support. So let me spend the rest of my time explaining what I believe is very important and is the right kind of support. And I sum it up this way. The right kind of support that urban youth need, in addition to the right information, is village members working with a youth's parents and family to cultivate a clear sense of purpose, a healthy set of values, and a path toward a successful future. So it's been said that it takes a village to raise a child. Everybody say village. Village. It takes a village to raise a child, but I think before we get there to that reality, we have to first recognize that actually it takes a family to raise a child. And if that family, if a healthy home life has been compromised, what happens is the village must then compensate. And I personally believe that every child, especially in the hood, deserves and needs his or her own mother and his or her own father and his or her own home. Now, we celebrate and we're grateful for village members that step up, but I think we have to first recognize that the further we get away from a healthy home life, the more the village has to compensate. So I want to stress first the with. village members working with an urban youth's parents and family to cultivate a clear sense of purpose, healthy values, path toward a successful future. What I've seen is that very well-intended village members have often did what they did or do what we do in place of an urban youth's parents as opposed to with. I have a friend down in Atlanta, and he runs a phenomenal after-school program. Phenomenal. And having had the privilege of volunteering with the program there 3 or 4 times a month, I noticed something that actually was concerning for me. I noticed that his students would actually wake up early, they'd get on the bus, they'd go to school, they'd eat breakfast, they'd spend the whole day in school, they'd eat lunch, spend the afternoon, they'd get out, they'd get on the bus, go straight to program, eat snack, do homework, do enrichment, play kickball, hit somebody in the head with a dodgeball. Then they eat dinner at program, and then they go home with just enough time in the day to say, hi, Mom, hi, Dad, and knock out. Wake up, rinse, and repeat, and do it all over again. And what I saw was something very concerning. It's that as important as teachers, village members, pastors, community leaders, mentors are to the development of an urban youth, the most important experience that kid has is what happens in his home. And so he's still got to go home at the end of the day. And if we're not helping as village members cultivate healthy home life to the extent that we can, that kid is going to be at a great disadvantage in order to become all that he is intended to be. So that's the with. I also want to look at parents, village members working with an urban youth's parents, plural. I found that a lot of very well-meaning village members have essentially disregarded the vital importance that the fact that urban youth came into the hood with a mother and his father, his or her father. And within the urban context, we see a great density, a great number of families that don't have dad around. I've seen awesome pastors offer baby dedication services, right? Where we say, hey, as a faith community, we want to walk with you. We want to grow with you. We want to support you as this child grows up and reaches his or her potential. But a lot of times the question is never asked, where's his dad? Where's her dad? And I've seen a lot of times the dad is in the same city. So I think if we can remember that it's very important, the right kind of support is working with an urban youth's parents. I've seen that dad just needs a little bit of encouragement. He just needs an invitation. He comes along, and together we can cultivate a holistic picture that will give an urban youth the best chance to succeed. And the last thing I want to unpack here is that as village members, as community members, we all have a very important position to play. We all have different positions. But I don't think that every person is called to invest in urban youth, no more than every person is called to invest in rural youth or dolphins for that matter. I think every one of us has a particular role to play in our piece of the world. But for those of us who do have the blessing to intersect with urban youth in our city and across America, I think it's very important that we simply cultivate these 2 principles. That urban youth need the right information. They can make it. They have the most to do with what happens to them in their life. And 2, with the right kind of support, I deeply believe that urban youth can become great success stories and not merely statistics. So allow me to leave you with a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He said this, in a real sense, all life is interrelated. He said that we are all caught in an inescapable network of mutuality. He said that we are all tied in a single garment of destiny. What affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. You can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This is the interrelated structure of reality. Thank you.